right, Chapter 2. Next day, as they sat eating breakfast, Great Uncle Mary came back. He loomed in the doorway, tall and hollow-eyed under the thatch of white hair, and beamed at their surprised faces. "Good morning," he said cheerfully. "Any coffee left?" The ornaments seemed to rattle on the mantelpiece as he spoke. Great Uncle Mary always gave the impression of being far too big for any room he was in. Father reached out imperturbably to pull up another chair. "What's it like out this morning, Mary? Doesn't look so good to me." Great Uncle Mary sat down and helped himself to toast, holding the slice in one large palm while he spread butter on it with Father's knife. "Cloud, thick and coming in from the sea. We're going to have rain." Barney was fidgeting with unbearable curiosity. Suddenly, forgetting the family rule that they should never ask their mysterious great-uncle questions about himself, he burst out, "Mary, where have you been?" In the heat of the moment, he used the pet name which he had invented when he was very small. They all used it sometimes still, but not for every day. Jane hissed quietly between her teeth, and Simon glared at him across the table. But Great Uncle Mary seemed not to have heard. "It may not last," he went on conversationally to Father through a mouthful of toast, "but I think we shall have it for most of the day." "Will there be thunder?" Jane said. Simon added hopefully, "Shall we have a storm at sea?" Barney sat silent while their voices eddied round the table. The weather, he said to himself in exasperation. All of them talking about the weather, when Great Uncle Mary's just come back from his quest. Then over their voices there came a low rumble of thunder, and the first spattering sounds of rain. As everyone rushed to the window to look out at the heavy gray sky, Barney crossed unnoticed to his great uncle and slipped his hand into his for a moment. "Mary," he said softly, "did you find it, what you were looking for?" He expected Great Uncle Mary to look past him with the familiar, amiable, obstinate expression that greeted any question. But the big man looked down at him almost absently. The eyebrows were drawn forbiddingly together on the craggy, secret face, and there was the old fierceness in the dark hollows and lines. He said gently, "No, Barnabas, I didn't find it this time." Then it was as if a blanket came down again over his face. "I must go and put the car away." He called to Father and went out. The thunder rolled quietly, far out over the sea, but the rain fell with gray insistence, blurring the windows as it washed down outside. The children wandered aimlessly about the house. Before lunch, they tried going for a walk in the rain, but came back damp and depressed. "It's like our walk on the coast the other day, Sully." That was too much. Halfway through the afternoon, Mother put her head round the door. "I'm going upstairs to work until supper. Now look, you three. You can go where you like in the house, but you must promise not to touch anything that's obviously been put away. Everything valuable is all locked up, but I don't want you poking at anyone's private papers or belongings. All right?" "We promise," Jane said, and Simon nodded. In a little while, Father muffled himself in a big black oilskin and went off through the rain to see the harbor master. Jane wandered round the bookshelves, but all the books within reach seemed to have titles like Round the Horn or Log Book of the Virtue, 1886, and she thought them very dull. Simon, who had been sitting making darts out of the morning paper, suddenly crumpled them all up irritably. "I'm fed up with this. What shall we do?" Barney stared gloomily out of the window. "It's raining like anything. The water in the harbor's all flat, and on our first proper day. Oh, I hate the rain. I hate it, I hate it, I hate the rain," he began to chant morosely. Simon prowled restlessly around the room, looking at the pictures on the dark wallpaper. "It's a very dreary house when you're shut up inside. He doesn't seem to think about anything but the sea, does he, the captain? This time last year you were going to be a sailor, too." "Well, I changed my mind. Oh, well, I don't know. Anyway, I should go on a destroyer, not a potty little sailing ship like that one. What is it? He peered up at the inscription under an engraving. The Golden Hind. That was Drake's ship when he sailed to America and discovered potatoes. That was Raleigh. Oh well, said Barney, who didn't really care. What useless things they discovered, Simon said critically. I shouldn't have bothered about vegetables. I should have come back loaded with doubloons and diamonds and pearls. And apes and peacocks, said Jane, harking vaguely back to a poetry lesson at school. And I should have gone exploring into the interior, and the rude natives would have turned me into a god and tried to offer me to their wives. Why would the natives be rude? Said Barney. Not that sort of rude, you idiot. It means, well, it's the sort of thing natives are. It's what all the explorers call them. Let's be explorers, Jane said. We can explore the house. We haven't yet, not properly. It's like a strange land. We can work up from the bottom all the way up to the top. And we should have to take provisions with us so we can have a picnic when we get there, said Barney, brightening. We haven't got any. We can ask Mrs. Polk, said Jane. She's making cakes for Mother in the kitchen. Come on. Mrs. Polk in the kitchen laughed all over her red face and said, What will he think of next, I wonder? But she gave them, neatly wrapped, a stack of freshly baked scones cut in half, thickly buttered and put together again, a packet of squashed fly biscuits, 3 apples, and a great slab of dark yellowy orange cake, thick and crumbling with fruit. It's not an English novel if it doesn't make you really hungry for dessert and tea and brandy and stuff, so help yourselves. And something to drink, said Simon commandingly, already captain of the expedition. So Mrs. Polk good-humoredly added a big bottle of homemade lemonade, to finish and off. There, she said, that'll take you to St. Ives and back, I reckon. My rucksack's upstairs, said Simon. I'll get it. Oh, really, said Jane, who was beginning to feel a little foolish. We aren't even going outdoors. All explorers have rucksacks, Simon said severely, making for the door. I won't be a minute. Barney nibbled at some yellow cake crumbs from the table. This is smashing. Saffron cake, Mrs. Polk said proudly. You won't get that in London. Mrs. Polk, where's Rufus? Gone out, and a good job too, though I dare say we shall have his great wet feet all over the floor afore long. Professor took him for a walk. Now stop picking at that cake, me dear, or you'll spoil that picnic of yours. Simon came back with his rucksack. They filled it and went out into the little dark passage away from the kitchen, Mrs. Polk waving them farewell as solemnly as if they were off to the North Pole. Who did she say had taken Rufus for a walk? Said Jane. Great Uncle Mary, Barney said. They all call him the Professor, didn't you know? Mr. Penhallow did as well. They talk as if they've known him for years. They were on the first floor landing, long and dark, lit only from one small window. Jane waved her hand at a big wooden chest half hidden in one corner. What's that? It's locked, said Simon, trying the lid. One of the things we mustn't touch, I suppose. Actually, it's full of native gold and ornaments. We'll collect it on the way back and stow it in the hold. Who's going to carry it? Demanded Barney practically. Easy, we've got a string of native porters all walking behind in a row and calling me boss. Catch me calling you boss. Actually, you ought to be the cabin boy and call me Sir I. Aye, sir, Simon bellowed suddenly. Shut up, said Jane. Mother's working at the other end of the landing. You'll make her do a smudge. What's in here? Said Barney. There was a dark door in the shadows at the far end of the landing. I haven't noticed it before. He turned the handle, and the door opened outward with a slow creak. I say, there's another little corridor down some steps, and a door at the end of it. Come on. They went down over the worn carpet, beneath rows of old maps hanging on the walls. The little corridor, like all the house, had a smell of furniture polish and age and the sea, and yet nothing like these things really, but just the smell of strangeness. Hey, said Simon as Barney reached for the door. I'm the captain. I go first. There might be cannibals. Cannibals? Said Barney with scorn, but he let Simon open the door. It was an odd little room, very small and bare, with one round, leaded window looking out inland across the gray slate roofs and fields. There was a bed with a red and white gingham coverlet and a wooden chair, a wardrobe, and a washstand with an outsized willow pattern bowl and ewer, and that was all. Well, that's not very interesting, said Jane, disappointed. She looked about, feeling something was missing. Look, there isn't even a carpet, just a bare floor. Barney pattered across to the window. What's this? He picked something up from the windowsill, long and dark with the glint of brass. It's a sort of tube. Simon took it from him and turned it about curiously. It's a telescope in a case. He unscrewed the case so that it came apart in two halves. No, it's not. What a swizz. It's just the case with nothing inside. Now I know what this room reminds me of, Jane said suddenly. It's like a cabin in a ship. That window looks just like a porthole. I think it must be the captain's bedroom. We ought to take the telescope with us in case we lose our way, said Simon. Holding it made him feel pleasantly important. Don't be silly, it's just an empty case, Jane said. Anyway, it's not ours. Put it back. Simon scowled at her. I mean, Jane said hastily, we're in the jungle, not at sea, so there are landmarks. Oh, all right, Simon put the case down reluctantly. They emerged from the little dark corridor, its door as they closed it behind them, vanishing once more into the shadows so that they could hardly see where it had been. Not much else here. That one's Great Uncle Mary's bedroom. There's the bathroom this side of it, and Mother's studio room the other. What an odd way this house is built, Simon said, as they turned into another narrow corridor towards the stairs leading up to the next floor. All little bits joined together by funny little passages, as if each bit were meant to be kept secret from the next. Barney looked round him in the dim light, tapping at the half-paneled walls. It's all very solid. There ought to be secret panels and things, secret entrances into treasure caves. Well, we haven't finished yet. Simon led the way up the stairs to the familiar top landing, where the bedrooms were. Isn't it getting dark? I suppose it's the low clouds. Barney squatted on the top stair. We ought to have torches, burning brands to light the path and keep the wild animals off. Only we couldn't see because there are hostile natives all around, and they'd see. This definitely dates the book, huh? Simon took over. Somehow imagination worked easily in the friendly silence of the gray house. Actually, they're already after us, creeping along our tracks up the hill. We'll be able to hear their feet rustling soon. We ought to hide. Make camp somewhere that they can't get at. In one of the bedrooms. They're all caves. I can hear them breathing, Barney said, gazing down the dark stairs into the shadow. He was half beginning to believe it. The obvious caves wouldn't do, Simon said, remembering he was in command. They'd look there first of all. He crossed the landing and began thoughtfully opening and shutting doors. Mother's and Father's room, no good, very ordinary cave. Jane's, just the same. Bathroom, our room, no escape route anywhere. We shall all be turned into sacrifices and eaten. Boiled, said Barney, in a great big pot. Perhaps there's another door, cave, that we haven't noticed, like the one downstairs. Jane peered round the darkest end of the landing beside her brother's door, but the passage came to a dead end, the wall running unbroken round all three sides. There ought to be one. After all, the house goes straight up, doesn't it? And there's a door directly underneath there, she pointed at the blank wall, and a room behind it. So there ought to be a room behind the same size behind this wall. Simon became interested. You're quite right, but there isn't any door. Perhaps there's a secret panel, Barney said hopefully. You read too many books. Have you ever seen a real secret panel in a real house? Anyway, there isn't any paneling on this wall, just wallpaper. Your room's on the other side, Jane said. Is there a door in there? Simon shook his head. Barney opened the door into their bedroom and went in, kicking his slippers under the bed as he went past. Then he stopped suddenly. Hey, come in here. What's the matter? That bit between our beds, where the wall makes a sort of alcove for the wardrobe. What's on the other side? Well, the landing, of course. It can't be. There's too much wall in here. You stand in the doorway and look on both sides. The landing stops before it gets that far. I'll bang on the wall where it does stop, and you listen in here, said Jane. She went outside, pulling the door shut, and they heard a faint tapping on the wall just over the head of Barney's bed. There you are, Barney said, hopping with excitement. The landing only reaches to there, but the wall in here goes on for yards, right over your bed to the window, so there must be a room on the other side. Jane came back into the bedroom. The wall doesn't look nearly as long out there as it does in here. It isn't, and I think that means, Simon said slowly, that there must be a door behind the wardrobe. Well, that finishes it then, Jane said, disappointed. That wardrobe's enormous. We shall never be able to move it. I don't see why not. Simon looked thoughtfully at the wardrobe. We shall have to pull it down from down low so the top doesn't overbalance. If we all pull at one end, perhaps it'll swing round. Come on then, Jane said. You and I pull, and Barney hold the top and shout if he feels it overbalancing. They both bent and heaved at the nearest leg of the wardrobe. Nothing happened. I think the stupid thing's nailed to the floor, said Jane in disgust. No, it's not. Come on, once more. 1, 2, 3, heave! The great wooden tower squeaked unwillingly a few inches across the floor. Go on, it's coming. Barney could hardly stand still. Simon and Jane tugged and puffed and blew, their sneakers slithering on the linoleum, and gradually the wardrobe moved out at an angle from the wall. Barney, peering into the gloom behind, suddenly shrieked. There it is a door. Ooh! He staggered backwards, gasped, and sneezed. It's all covered in dust and cobwebs. It can't have been open for years. Well, go on, try it, panted Simon, pink with breathlessness and success. I hope it doesn't open out towards us, Jane said, sitting weakly on the floor. I can't pull this thing another inch. It doesn't, Barney said, muffled from behind the wardrobe. They heard the door creak protestingly open. Then he reappeared with a large, dark smudge down one cheek. There isn't a room. It's a staircase. More like a ladder, really. It goes up a sort of hatchway, and then there's light up there. He looked at Simon with a crooked grin. You can go first, boss. One by one, they slipped behind the wardrobe and through the little hidden door. Inside it was at first very dark, and Simon, blinking, saw before him a wide stepped ladder, steeply slanting, rising towards a dimly lit square beyond which he could see nothing. The steps were thick with dust, and for a moment he felt nervous about disturbing the stillness. Then very faintly he heard above his head the low, familiar murmur of the sea outside. At once the comfortable noise made him more cheerful, and he even remembered what they were supposed to be. Last one up, shut the door, he called down before his shoulders. Keep them at bay, and he began to climb the ladder. All right, that's the end of chapter 2, everybody, and it's about 8:30. So yeah, that's the beginning of this very English novel, and